Hello, I'm so excited to be with you today. And we're going to be talking about how you have a demanding career and a full life because it's totally possible. But the first thing we have to do is throw out the myths. There are a lot of things we've been told that just frankly aren't true. And I'm going to give you a little science today. So it's going to be hacks to help you have a full life. And when I talk about the science, what I mean is behavioral science, which is social science, behavioral economics, all that good stuff, plus neuroscience. We've learned a ton now that MRIs are affordable to really understand what's going on with your brain and how to feel good in your body while you're living this extraordinary life. Okay. So as we live this full life, these are the key elements that work together. The main thing is well-being, but it also matters who's on your team and how you think, and are you watching the way you're thinking, and your story and identity. So let's dive in. So the first myth is that work is basically consumes the middle part of your life and you really have no time to play. That's really not true. And in fact, when Social Security was introduced at 65, the expected age life was 62. So really, we were never supposed to retire. The new model, which is much more fulfilling, is a longer life, right? Most of us are going to make it to 100 in the economy or nation that we live in. And it means learnings throughout your life, work is throughout your life. And the thing that we tend to not focus on is this shade of gray, which is play, oxygen mask first, taking care of ourselves. We tend to put ourselves last, as we know, right? It's like the oxygen mask first is that a reminder that these things are important. But it all starts with our story, right? We have stories of life and how short it can be and how long it can be. For me, the reason I give this talk is because I think life is both short and long. I want to design for long, but unfortunately, I lost my brother in a plane crash when he was 37 and I was 8 months pregnant. And I almost didn't see him the last time I saw him because of my dedication to work. So this is a really personal story to me. And I hope as you think about your life, you bring in that personal side because we need to integrate our brilliant brains and intellect and horsepower at work with our emotional reality and how are we connected to the loved ones and the fact that life can be unpredictable. So this matters, right? The second myth is more work is better. We really believe this. We really think the harder we work, the more we should work. And yet the science tells us over and over again, that's not true. So Henry Ford put in a 40-hour work week because the error rates were going up. But most of us are not in manufacturing. So Leslie Perlow, who's a professor at Harvard Business School, did a great longitudinal research, which means it's research proven again, and again, that shows that when teams have time constraints on how much they collaborate, creativity goes up, burnout goes down. And if you want more information, she's got a great TED Talk. It's really powerful information because it busts that myth that we should just keep working. The other one is the ideal worker. So the ideal worker is a social science term that might make you a little angry because it's about prioritizing work above all else. And in social science, ideal worker means tall, white male, extroverted, stay-at-home wife. It's frustrating. It's no one on this Zoom call, right? So know the social science because when we try to be that ideal worker where we are prioritizing work above all else, we're not living actually the life we want to live, right? So let's look at some of the funny science of this ideal worker. I have to poke a little fun because bias can be so frustrating. But here's a little data on why the ideal worker norm doesn't work for women, right? There are more CEOs named David than there are CEOs or all women CEOs. So we really need to tackle this ideal worker norm and this overwork and this prioritization. So why? Why do we do this, right? It's not in anyone's real best interest. In fact, I even don't think some of those men have lives that are feeling fulfilled. So one thing we need to know is that we have a status quo bias. Our brains like to do the same thing. It's less exhausting. So be aware of it. When you see status quo bias, that's the metacognition. Be like, okay, we're doing the same thing in terms of life. We tend to want innovation when it comes to work. But when it comes to living our full lives, we can kind of fall into like stories we've heard from loved ones who might be a little older than we are. And we just need to wave some of those stories away and those myths. Because really, I believe the true superhero is where well-being fuels your creative work, where boundaries support you. Boundaries are a good thing. They give you focus and impact. That to me is the ideal worker of the future. Everyone here, right? So let's focus on what will remain true and important in work and life so you can have this, boss career without sacrificing family or your health. So when it comes to your health, the number one correlation to long health is actually relationships. And we often say like, well, how long did your grandma live? Or thinking it's genes or social class or IQ. It's not, it's relationships. And it's often the thing I hear from women that they don't prioritize. They prioritize their family, their careers, and somewhere down below is relationships. So just know that that's actually correlated to a long, healthy life. And these impacts have immediate issues on our well-being as well as long-term. So when we short shrift our well-being, we actually make our telomeres shorter. Telomeres are the end of your DNA strand that are correlated to age-related diseases that you do not want. So the things that we need to do to keep our telomeres long are things you do every day, and we're going to dive into this. Number one, sleep. Neuroscience of sleep is so clear. In fact, I wrote the key things on this talk after a nap. NASA did an experiment that showed that a nap, I think it was even just 26 minutes, raised your productivity, raised your creativity. But we still have this bias against sleep, like that's, lazy or self-indulgent. But actually, it's crucial for creativity. It's crucial for your brain health. It works for work. It works for your life because creativity is what matters, right? The other important pillar for your well-being and feeling like this is a full, beautiful life is taking care of your body, right? So a lot of women say, I don't have time to exercise, and men, humans. But the most efficacious time to exercise, because why not focus on disproportionate results, is right after you eat. If you walk for just 5 minutes or do wall sits or whatever, walk your stairs if it's raining inside, that actually lowers your blood sugar and it has the most positive impact on your body. So that's a little habit I developed. When I feel like I don't have time to exercise, I at least make sure that I'm walking on a consistent basis and throughout the day, and for sure after I eat. Now, exercise is critical to mood and motivation. We know this, right? There's the knowing doing gap. Intellectually, you know this, but consider how you move it to the doing side. Because again, it's not zero sum. When you exercise, you have more motivation, you feel better. So it actually contributes to your doing better work. It's not a feeling time deficit. That's what I really want to share. So in addition to moving, think about who you're spending time with. Who are the 5 people you spend the most time with at work, at home? These are the people that actually impact your happiness more than a raise. Science proves this. So if we hang out with people who are eating healthy, we tend to eat healthier. If we hang out with people who are smoking, we're more likely to smoke. So consider in your community, in your herd, in your inner circle, who are the people that raise you to live this fulfilling life in both work and in your personal life. And one strategy I learned from the brilliant Jennifer Acker, she teaches at Stanford Business School, is the value of multipliers. So multipliers are when you combine things together and it actually improves the result. So an example is Jennifer's a dear friend. So we might socialize, talk about the work we love to do in the world or our family, whatever. Go out in nature. We know that nature like resets the brain. It's beautiful, calms it. And then we go for a walk. So if we think we don't have time for friends or we don't have time for exercise, and we all have time for nature, right? Just look outside. These are ways in which we can be more time affluent and harness things that can feel sometimes like you don't have time. That's basically what you don't allow that to release, that you don't have time. It's really more about energy than it is time. And that's the key. I always think about like for metacognition, it's about thinking about how you think, right? How do we let go of the old tropes and bring in the science? And there are ways to do this very easily through meditation. So I originally saw this data from the Cleveland Clinic, but then I saw it again at the National Science Foundation. Our brains have so many thoughts per day. And what's tricky, and I hope it will stick in your memory because it blew my mind, 80% of our thoughts are negative and 95% of our thoughts are the same. So why, right? Well, 80% of our brain is negative, has negative thoughts because it's to protect us, right? We would need to look for the lion on the savannah or the blueberry that make us sick or the wrong mushroom or something like that. So we're wired for negativity to protect us. And we're wired to have the same thoughts because it uses less of our brain power when we have the same thoughts. when we use our prefrontal cortex, it takes more energy. So if we're having mostly negative thoughts and the same thoughts, the only way to shift this is actually to be active about it and to meditate. Some people love to do this from a spiritual perspective, but even if it doesn't ring your bell from a spiritual perspective, just know that it actually builds gray matter in the brain, and it helps you think about your thoughts and choose thoughts that serve you, right? To live this full, beautiful life. So I wanted to give you a visual to think about this, because it really matters both in how you work and how you interact with your friends and family at home, which is whenever you feel stressed, you might feel like this kind of like back of your head. It's that fight or flight. If you ask a question, if you move into curiosity and ask your teammate a question, ask your partner a question, you move into the discovery part of your brain. You literally change the blood flow in your brain. So anytime you're feeling a little bit like this, ask a question and you move into that discovery. The other powerful thing is you can change your nervous system. So right now I'm in the sympathetic nervous system. I'm delivering, I've got cortisol, and it's serving me, right? There are great reasons to be in your sympathetic nervous system, but we tend to be there too much and it depletes us. We feel exhausted, right? We see the numbers of burnout and we're like, oh, women in particular are burning out. So you actually have the power to change your nervous system by just breathing and moving to your parasympathetic nervous system. There's so much power. And the Navy SEALs actually say this is the number one thing they learned in their training was box breathing. You breathe in for 4, you hold for 4, you breathe out for 4, and you hold it out for 4. Think about that. The reason is when we breathe in, our heart rate goes up, and when we breathe out or hold, our heart rate goes down. And so when you actively shift from the sympathetic nervous system to the parasympathetic nervous system, you shift the way you feel. You shift the way you think. It really is powerful. It's simple breath, but it's incredibly powerful. And another thing I want to bring back into our world is more play, right? Play is not the opposite of work, right? Without play, we will feel depressed. We will not be living our full, beautiful lives. And we tend as women to do less of this than men, and especially women who have kids. So know this data, again, see it, and don't allow it to stay true for you, right? Let it be different for you. Choose action. So especially with the Great Resignation, we're seeing a lot of women who have been parents or are parents now who are just exhausted. And so one of the things I wanted to share was a meta-analysis, which means an analysis of many other studies of how kids are just fine when mothers are in the paid workforce versus staying home. The kids turn out the same socially, emotionally, physically. Again, bell curve. I had a kid with a health issue for a while that I had to take time off. So it's not that this is true for all people at all times. It's science, right? It's a bell curve. But your kids are just fine when we work outside the home. Hopefully we can get up outside the home with a pandemic. Our marriages actually go up, women who work, and antidepressant levels go down. So that's kind of important to just go like, oh, that's interesting. And to just think about the fluidity. There may be chapters in your life, like I talked about with my child who was sick, where I might be the lead parent instead of lead income. But we need to release these old labels of stay-at-home mom or dad or whatever, and just be like, there might be leads, and we might change the lead from time to time and be more fluid based on what's needed. The key is releasing old myths of like, what is best? What is best is what you define, right? And bringing in the science of what's true versus what you've been told. So I have to bring in my favorite Venn diagram. So I took a Japanese Venn diagram around the meaning of life, and I altered it to be science-based because it was a little bit spiritual, which is great, but I also wanted to have the science. So this is my Venn diagram that's science-based. Think about within fulfilling work. If you are thinking, oh, this is too much and I want to resign, how might you reassess, right? Because it's really about making sure that work is fulfilling so that you can live this beautiful life. And one powerful tool that I love is, again, from Jennifer Rocker, because she's my best friend, but she's also a brilliant researcher. So it's a multiplier. She has this wonderful book on humor, and it just became a main stage TED Talk. So feel free to watch her TED Talk or read the book. The point is, humor matters, right? We know humor matters at home, but humor also matters at work. It builds your leadership competencies. It enhances creativity. It releases all the good hormones in your brain. So think about taking an improv class with a friend. That's something we did because we want to live, again, full, beautiful lives. So think about these small hacks that might have a big result in how you feel in your body and in your life. These are a couple of the things we talked about today. I would love for you to write down one thing. We know in the science of habits, you need to start small. So I have done these things slowly over time, and I would love to hear what you do and talk in the Q&A. Because what really matters is that you are the hero of your own story, right? So when my brother was killed, I almost didn't go see my mom for her birthday because I was so dedicated to my work. And I didn't think I had time. And she was turning 60, which felt young. But that was actually the last time I saw my brother. And if I hadn't gone, I would have forever had that regret. And the day that there was a hero in my story was I walked into my boss's office and he said, Sally, I think you should go to your mom's party. And if he had said, I think you should go, I wouldn't have gone. So I want you to know how much power you have over not only your story, but potentially someone else's story, because many of you are leaders. How are we giving permission to both ourselves and to the people that we lead, that we trust, that we love, to lead lives that make the right decisions around blending work and family in new ways? Because I want you all to live beautiful, full lives, doing work that you find amazing, and have a fulfilling life with no regrets. It's totally possible. Embrace the science, and I look forward to your questions. Thanks for having me.